Have you ever had one of those moments where you just knew that you needed to do something, but you couldn't really explain why to save your life? Where everyone around you, including yourself and the logical part of your brain, kept asking why. But you really had no good answer other than, I just feel I need to do this. This happened to me almost a year ago. All of a sudden, I was coming out of a difficult time in my life, and I just had this overwhelming feeling to go out and explore, to meet new people, to do things alone, to challenge myself in so many ways. And it made zero sense because I was comfortable with my friends at the moment. I liked where I lived. I was trying to figure out this feeling of why do I feel I need to go explore. So, since this feeling persisted and it wouldn't go away, I decided to book a 3-month long trip that would have been later that year. And I decided to do this all alone with no agenda, no plan, just following that inner voice inside of me that said, go explore and figure things out. And what I discovered, it wasn't just about traveling, but it was about learning to really trust that part of myself that felt very truthful and listening to my intuition. So, today, I'm sharing what happens when you get brave enough to follow these inexplicable pulls that I do feel all of us experience, and what it can teach you about becoming the driver in your life, as that's what this podcast is about. So, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get In You Are Driving. I'm your host, Maria. I'm so glad you're here with me today because today we're diving into something that I think a lot of people can, of course, relate to, that feeling of being called towards something you can't quite explain, and the courage that it actually takes to go follow it. So, today's episode is called What a Girl Learned Driving Solo for 3 months. No destination, just intuition. And it's exactly what it sounds like. And I'm going to share with you some of the biggest lessons that I learned from following my gut, as we like to say, following my heart, whichever you prefer, and what that meant for me. And yeah, we're going to talk about how to recognize when I think our inner voice is trying to tell us something important, even if it's asking you to do something completely out of character. And we'll dive into what I discovered about the difference between being productive and just being busy out of fear. I'll share what I learned about loving something without clinging onto it so tightly that maybe it could become a prison. And we'll explore why sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is admit that you don't have all the answers, but trust the process anyways. This isn't about convincing you to quit your job and travel the world. It's about learning to trust yourself enough to follow what feels right for you, whatever that may look like in your life. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's talk about what happens when you stop asking, where am I going? And start asking, who am I becoming along the way? The first part we get into is going to be called the mysterious shift and learning to trust your inner voice. And something I want to preface with is the fact that I can work from anywhere. So this was not 3 months vacation. Like this was, yes, being in different areas, but I was still working full time. So let me paint a picture of you on how this all started. I had just come out of a time in my life that I describe as my hermit crab era. And again, there's those times in your life where you really went through a lot because for some reason life loves to throw everything at you this at the same time. And that was kind of a whole year for me. It was just hit after hit. And to be honest, I was just trying to get through the day. Like for me, when you're going through something hard, I always tell myself, just get through today. But finally, it was coming to a point where it was all really taming, and just thank God it was starting to slow down. And I was able to just start thinking about other things and just be still and be present and then think about my life and where I wanted it to go because I could breathe again. And when I had this time to breathe again, this is when something interesting happened. And for me, instead of just kind of being relieved and wanting to sit there and stay in my little shell and be cozy, I just wanted to completely get out and do things. Maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. For me, it would have made sense to just be chill, but for some reason, I was secluded so long, I just needed to get out there, like meet new people, do new things, test myself, like put myself in places where maybe I didn't belong. I just wanted to explore. And I had heard this concept by a podcast I listened to. He said, flirt with the world. Yeah, I wanted to flirt with the world. I was ready. Like, I wanted to flirt with life. And maybe because I know myself, right? I just know this isn't like typical Maria behavior. So I was like, okay, I've surprised myself before. Here I am surprising myself again. um, because I've always been the planning type of person. I think about the decisions I make. I'm very responsible. I I do like to have a lot of fun and I like spontaneity, but I do it with still a lot of responsibility. Again, I just like routines. I'm not necessarily a comfort zone person because I really care about growth and development. So comfort zones always kind of bothered me. But, this was new. I had never had an urge to like explore so much. And again, maybe it was because I came out of hibernation and I was realizing the world was just full of possibilities. I was young, I was single, let's go. So, yeah. Here's the thing, though, that was so confusing about this feeling, though, is just it didn't make logical sense. I mean, again, wouldn't the normal response be to just rest and enjoy my stability, play it safe for a while? No, I mean, I just felt this pull to do the exact opposite. I wanted to like bolt towards uncertainty and towards the unknown and towards experiences that would challenge me, meeting people that would scare me. Like, I have been known in the past, I think only I would know this, but I actually really like challenging myself a lot. And I talked about this in one of my previous episodes about the hormonic effect, about exposing your fears to yourself little by little. I think that was part of this. I think I wanted to solo travel. I wanted to go to places and meet new people that I had nothing in common with, but I just hadn't done it. But I want to talk about how uncomfortable it is when your gut is telling you to do something that you know is going to take a lot of energy out of you and really put you out of your comfort zone. Like, I've put myself out of my comfort zone a lot, but I mean, this was going to be, I knew this was like new level me putting myself outside of my comfort zone. And everyone around me, I didn't ask too many people their thoughts on it, but I think I was struggling the most with my rational brain, which was just thinking, wait, who are you and what did you do with Maria? Like, I know you like a good challenge, girly, but this is a lot, eh? But what I've learned about when I personally have these like mysterious shifts and pulls in my intuition is they're not random. And they're actually maybe something prepping me for something better, maybe even like a season of growth, of change, of transition, whatnot. And something that I knew really intuitive about this past year, and I'm still living it in this moment. I am in a season of transition in my life, and I feel that I'm being prepared for a lot of change, even though I don't know what that change is. And I think in that hermit crab era, I was a bit in like survival mode. I was rigid. I was trying to just get through the day. The world felt super small. But then, when it kind of ended and I had breathing room, then that like inner wisdom and intuition like came out again. But the scary part about this and this shift that I felt was I knew it was going to take a lot of courage. And I knew it was going to really put me out of my comfort zone. But again, I really had this desire to flirt with life and a and just be open to just all the possibilities out there. Like, sometimes when you think about all the endless possibilities there are, it makes life really exciting again. And I think I really needed that after being stuck in a very long rut. Was I needed life to feel exciting again. And I think I needed to break out a little bit of my super responsible Maria and have a little bit of a rebellion. No, a healthy rebellion. But here's what I realized. If I didn't act on this gut feeling, I was going to miss something. I knew I was going to miss something. And that something felt very important to me, too important to ignore. Even if I couldn't articulate what it was, I just knew it deep down. And again, my inner voice was saying, all right, you've been surviving. Now it's time to get out and live. And not just live, but grow. And in that growth journey, I knew I would have experiences that would change me forever. And, I've talked about truth a lot on my podcast. It's one of my core pillars of this podcast, and how it's the number one thing that dictates what direction I choose to go in my life. And the sole reason I went after this and I knew it was right is because I knew truth was involved in the decision. There was so much truth in this. So even though it didn't make sense, it was unexpected and it's not what I thought I would do. And I knew when people found out, they'd be like, wait, what? And I didn't know where it would lead. I just knew there was going to be growth with this, and expansion, and doing what I wanted to do. And let me tell you, this decision to follow my gut, to trust this pull, and to be open, it really has changed a lot for me this year. And I've grown a lot this year. Again, we're talking almost a year. This happened in October, September. So now we're in August. And this change, it didn't bring me all the answers, but it did teach me I could trust. This gave me a lot more confidence and trust in my intuition, and maybe not always having the perfect plan figured out, and that sometimes life really is just about following what feels truthful in that moment and seeing where that leads you, because I think truth always leads you down the correct path. It's just a belief I've always had. My life motto is seek the truth in all you do and it will orient you. So I would ask you, have perhaps you ever come out of a difficult period and maybe felt an urge to just do something? Maybe not as crazy as me, but something that felt different than playing it safe. And more importantly, did you listen to it, or did you talk yourself out of it because it didn't fit who you were supposed to be, or your fears came crawling in? I want you to think about this. And here's the truth. I think sometimes our biggest growth and the biggest opportunities, and us kind of like opening the window to opportunity in our life, happens when we follow these gut instincts that make no sense. And when we listen to that inner voice that has wisdom, and it might know, no, it might know. I think it really knows exactly when we need to heal, when we need to expand, when we need to become who we're meant to be, even when our logical mind is like, no, this is crazy. So following that gut feeling to flirt with life led me personally on a journey that I could have never planned if I tried. And it all started with just trusting that shift, that pull, and that inexplicable knowing that it was time to get out of my shell and see what was waiting for me. All right, so now we're going to get into my lessons. And this segment is going to be about what I learned about productivity on this trip, and why maybe responsible Maria was acting a bit out of survival mode. So I followed this pool, and I actually followed this pool in a lot of different ways before I went on this 3-month solo trip, but I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to get into what I learned on this 3-month solo trip. And I will share that I went to 3 different cities. The first was Budapest, Hungary. The second was Vienna, Austria. And the third was Copenhagen, Denmark. I had never been to these cities before. I literally chose them because I took about 2 weeks zooming in on Google Maps in Europe, and I really thought, okay, where do I want to spend time? What are cities that have been intriguing me? And that's how I picked them, because I knew nothing. I just kind of picked. Yeah, and I really liked all of them, I must have to say. Very different than any other place that I had been. I have spent a lot of time in Spain, Portugal, and Italy, but I hadn't really done anything northern and anything Eastern European, so I really like it. But all right, that's where I went. And I want to talk about how something that I learned on this trip was who I was and who I am when absolutely nobody is watching. Because I've like spent plenty of time alone, but never for an extended period of time like this, right? Like, this is quite an extended period of time. Like, I'm talking weeks that I didn't talk to somebody in person, right? Of course I called people. And I felt like it was kind of nice. It made me feel very relaxed because, sometimes, we do have to have energy when we go out and meet people. And this made me feel like I didn't have to turn on for anyone. I didn't have to meet anybody. Like, I just could do whatever I wanted with, of course, work involved. And what I discovered about when I was alone and nobody was there watching me was that I was kind of reassured, but also a little bit concerned about myself, because the reassuring part was that I'm still me. I was still extremely responsible. I was getting up. I had a schedule. I was getting my groceries. I got my work done. I didn't fall apart with, like, I've never been the person to fall apart. I don't need somebody to tell me what to do. I can fully do it. I don't become lazy when no one's checking on me. Like, I can keep commitments. Like, in that way, I will never have to worry about myself. Unless I got a concussion and my personality changed, I can trust myself to get things done. But the concerning part was that I kind of realized that this responsible part of me was perhaps a bit traumatized. I don't like to use the word trauma lightly. And sometimes I do think that now we're taking these like psychology terms and using them a bit too much to describe personality. But I do think some of this was from me thinking I had to be in survival mode. So let me explain. So I noticed that when I had complete freedom, right? I mean, complete freedom to structure my days how I wanted, I just still felt this constant nagging in my head and pressure to constantly be productive. Like, it's like I'd wake up and I would immediately start planning what I needed to accomplish that day. And if I didn't do it right away, the guilt I would feel, like, no, you can't sit in the park an extra hour, or no, you can't just walk around. Like, this is something that I've struggled with a very, very long time, that I constantly have to be doing. And that if I'm not doing, I'm lazy and I'm not useful. And I think it just got more exasperated and noticeable to me on this trip. And I was thinking a lot about this. And per usual, I was listening to a podcast, and it was one of those podcasts that, you know how it is. That's exactly what you needed to hear. And there I was. She was giving it to me. And she said something that I really, really liked. And she said, the feeling of being lost is perhaps an invitation for us to question the versions of ourselves that was designed to survive and not thrive. I stopped walking and I started writing this down, because this actually made a lot of sense for me now that I had time to slow down and think more and not just survive. I could think, why do I carry so much guilt about productivity to a point where it paralyzes me? And I'm like, oh, I'm so terrible. And then, guilt isn't helpful because, again, it paralyzes you. So this made me realize, this is an invitation to maybe check on something that, yes, in my past has been very helpful to help me survive because I've always been responsible. I've always gotten things done. But now I'm not thriving with this type of mental environment I've got going on. So I realized that I've always taken actually a lot of pride in being responsible. I get things done. I don't need external motivation. I don't think my mom told me once to brush my teeth. Like, people can count on me. I can count on me. But I started asking myself, where did this come from? And again, is this helping me thrive, or am I just like now surviving off of something? What I learned is that ever since I can remember, I've been terrified of slowing down. Terrified. Like, I remember my mom, she still will tell this story that if the time was passing on the clock and I wasn't getting things done, I would start crying. I don't think much has changed other than I don't cry now, but I get super frustrated if I'm wasting time and not being productive. My definition of what productive is. I feel like I'm worthless. I genuinely feel worthless if I don't feel like I'm doing something. And that's very sad because it made me realize, all right, Maria, this is not a strength, this is a fear. Like, there's something wrong here. Because I think also maybe it was me operating from a place of scarcity and not abundance. And again, survival mode masquerading as responsibility. And, I'm already incredibly blessed and lucky to be on a trip like this, right? And here I am with all this freedom of time, getting to explore these cities, organizing my day the way I want. Like so many days, I was exploring from like literally 9 to 5, and then I would go back to my apartment and grind from like 5 to midnight. Like that's how I was structuring my days because I also wanted to get everything out of these cities. But even then, I was feeling guilty. I was like, oh, but maybe I should be working 95, 9 to 5. I'm thinking, who cares about the hours? Like, what matters is you're getting your freaking work done. Like, the things that I guilt trip myself about, sometimes I'm like, what is my problem? So, what I do when I get into pickles like this, I do like to say pickle, is I always try to think, okay, what's the truth here? How can I dissect this problem I'm having with the truth? And the truth that I kept coming back to was that, okay, my guilt with this is not serving me. It's just paralyzing me. And I'm not even enjoying these beautiful cities that I'm in because I'm harassing myself. And it wasn't making me more grateful. It was just making me miserable. And it was motivating me to not get up and work. And it was creating a lot of negative emotion that I didn't want. And it was robbing me of my present joy and experiencing these cities. And yeah, who cares? 9 to 5, I'm out. 5 to 12, I'm working. Like, I've made certain choices to create the life that I have. Why am I sitting here guilt tripping myself all the time? And I guess I realized that maybe I had somehow conditioned myself to believe that my worth only came from how much I produced. And this is very common, right? Like you hear it and you're like, oh, we all know this. I think we all know this when it comes to other people. But then when it comes to ourselves, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so true. Like it hits differently when you realize it about yourself. And I think something that this trip really helps me realize, and I think this is something maybe more feminine too. I think the masculine is a lot more do. The feminine is being. It's just being. I mean, even when I'm recording this sometimes, I'm like, Maria, slow down. Just be. Like, just be. And I realized, and maybe I forgot to, like, rest isn't laziness. Like, we think everything, actually, I'm going to pull out this quote that I just came across today. An amazing quote that was literally just on this topic. It was on a podcast. I forget the podcast name now. Hold on, but it was Lauren Bostick, who is very intuitive. And she said, everybody thinks doing and reacting is how you gain momentum. But the most strategic people in history who created value and legacy are the ones who created space to think. And in my opinion, they also just created space to be. So yeah, I thought a lot about being on this trip and how important it is to just slow down and trust the entire process of your life because, yeah, harassing myself wasn't getting myself anywhere. And what I mean when I say some of us are operating maybe in survival mode without realizing it is maybe like me, you think you're being super responsible, but maybe you're just scared. Like, I know a lot of this came from fear that if I'm not productive, if I don't take care of myself, somehow my life will fall apart within 2 weeks and I'll be homeless on the street. That's where my mind goes. And again, that if I'm not proving, and I don't think I'm trying to prove to anyone actually other than myself. Like, I wasn't trying to prove it to my mom or my dad or my family. Like, being productive actually for me has been my problem of like, I need to prove this to myself. And I was just scared and scared that my life would fall apart if I'm not always being productive. But what I learned during a lot of quiet days alone is that stillness is not the enemy of progress. And sometimes the most productive thing you can do is give yourself permission to not be productive. And sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is question whether your version of whatever responsibility is to you is maybe just fear, really convincing you differently. Because I know that's what it was for me. And don't get me wrong, being productive is amazing. Having goals is amazing. Executing is amazing. And I can do that. Like, I actually really love this part of myself that I am so good at executing. I'm like, not perfect. Let's go. Let's execute. Like, I really appreciate that about myself. The discipline, the drive, like, I can make things happen. And it served me so well. But I think there's just seasons in life where you need to be still. And this season for me was definitely about stillness. I'm still sitting in the stillness and I'm getting annoyed, but I'm trying to be calm because sometimes you can't force direction and answer. So, what actually blew my mind is that a lot of this is the feminine energy, the yin and yang. Right now, feminine, masculine energy are being talked about all the time, but essentially, this is just going back to yin and yang, right? Like all those opposite forces. And the feminine is about being able to sit and still and be still and know that in those times when maybe you feel like nothing is happening, you're actually still learning a lot because I have been go, go, go ever since I can remember. And again, it's served me. But I don't think I've ever really figured out what rest has been for me. Even to this day, if you ask me, what do you do to rest? It's still very difficult for me to give an answer. I actually still really struggle resting and defining what that is. So I'm working on that, but I am learning to stop and to start trusting. And again, I knew I was in this season of life that was stillness. It definitely felt like life was saying, yeah, she needs to slow down. And whether you think that's the universe and the stars aligning, whether you think that's God, whether you just think that's your intuition, I know that the message was clear. This girlie needs to slow down and be. And it was really hard because even now I'm like still itching to be productive and to work on something. But, right now I'm in this transition. I know I'm in this transition and nothing has been super clear. So, yeah, I think it was a time for me to enjoy the fact that I was young, single in these absolutely beautiful cities and just the freedom to exist with, again, like no clear destination. Like, even when I booked these trips, like, it wasn't necessarily for any specific reason. That was very interesting to tell people before I left. But what I realized is that, I am very creative and I have all these ideas and I want to do them and I want to execute, and that's amazing. But I think right now and then, because I just got back 3 weeks ago, forcing something to happen and being super productive, it was just fear. Fear that, oh my gosh, if I don't do, what's going to happen? Again, forcing productivity, forcing action, forcing things to happen because I was scared that if I wasn't constantly moving forward, if I wasn't constantly writing down my goals, I would somehow fall behind or I would miss out or I would be upset with myself. But I think sometimes all we can do is show up to the very ordinary day in our lives and trust that what we're doing and if we're being consistent, that life will work itself out and it will reveal itself to us step by step. And I think there's a really beautiful thing called surrender in all of this. I'm learning so much this year to just surrender and how maybe the courageous thing to do is to not push harder, to be. I mean, at least for me in this moment, being is hard. I want to keep doing. I want these things in my life to change. And I'm the person that's like, well, if I'm not doing, they're never going to change. But the voice inside of me is like, no, be. Just be. So you have to trust there's a bigger plan. And you can't control everything. And to wait. So what I want to ask you is, what would happen if you gave yourself permission to be in a season of perhaps stillness without feeling guilt about it? Because I know so many people struggle with this productivity thing. It's a struggle. And what if instead of forcing the next step, you just trusted the most productive thing you can do, which is simply present yourself and show up today as who you want to be? And I think a big one is, are you being responsible or are you just being scared of what happens if you stop moving? So this lesson really taught me to just, again, distinguish between surviving and thriving, and being productive all the time. I figured out was perhaps in that moment of my life a survival tactic and not a thriving tactic, because being guilty all day was not helping me be productive. And it's not a good emotion to be having all the time. Like, yes, it can be helpful sometimes if you've hurt somebody, but in my case, it was not helpful. And thriving and surviving. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give yourself permission to just exist, to just be, and that you're still worthy. Like, if you're like me and your worth is tied up to your productivity, I just want you to know that if you're being still and if you're just being, you're still worthy. Your worth should not be tied to your productivity. Second lesson that I learned was I felt like a reoccurring theme was detachment on this 3 month solo trip, which makes sense, right? Because I'm all alone. So I'm thinking a lot about detaching from my family, my friends, the city that I love. And this one was hard. But it was also so liberating. And I think I learned that even love for good things in our life can maybe become a prison if we're not careful. So picture this. I have been living in Madrid for 3 years now. That's where I am right now. And Madrid, I can't even begin to explain how much I like this city and how much I enjoy living here. It brings out a part of me that I really like. And for myself, I call Madrid the city that there's so much life to be lived. I, Words will not be able to express how much I enjoy this city and how it's changed my life. The cafes, the people that I've met. Again, it's much more than a city to me because there's so much emotion tied to it. And I'll always cherish it. If I decide to leave tomorrow, I will always cherish Madrid. But something that got tricky about it was I think that at some point, this love that I have for Madrid became a bit obsessive. I remember thinking almost a year and a half ago now, I had this thought, and it was, I'll never leave Madrid. I have to be in Madrid. And I remember the moment that thought went away, I had one right behind it, which was, that's not healthy. This seems a little bit obsessive. This seems like you're getting too attached to something. And in my opinion, you should never be so attached to something. You should never make something in your life so important that if you lose it, you just break apart, right? And this is what I think. I think the truth is, again, if you lose something, you should always be okay and you should know how to recover. And that thought, I just felt like it came from a place that wasn't healthy. And now for me, it was Madrid, right? This could be a person, this could be a job, this could be an identity. I think when we refuse to let go of things and we're just determined to make them work, this isn't good. I think you could be too attached, especially if you feel it's controlling you. Now, I want to be very clear about something. There's a huge difference between love and attachment. Love is open handed. Love appreciates and cherishes and delights in something. I think attachment is more closed fisted and it kind of says, this is mine and I can't survive without it and I have to have it. Now, of course, I love Madrid deeply. But I think in that moment, I had just become too attached to it in a way that I actually think it was limiting my growth. Like, it wasn't good. And there was a part of me that's like, you need to be open to other cities, other things, other ways of life. And this is something that I've struggled with since I was a little girl. When I was a little girl, you gave me a candy. If I love that candy, it's the only candy I wanted to have. I couldn't open my mind to the possibility of a different candy. Like, this was just a bad habit. I think now as an adult was manifesting in me being Madrid is my favorite chocolate. So this is where this solo trip idea comes in. So again, this was a 3-month trip. And the biggest reason that I did this trip was because of this unhealthy attachment I feel like I had been forming. I thought to myself, okay, I don't like this. What can I do to push back against this? And my idea was saying, I need to learn how to love something without being controlled and having a fear of losing it. Because I think in that moment, maybe I felt that was when I was going through a really hard time in my life. And I think I thought maybe I was going to have to move back to the US for reasons that I didn't want to move back to. And I think that's why I had this like, no, I have to be in Madrid. But then I was like, you can love something, but also not be scared to lose it. Because again, you don't want to be controlled by something. And this was so scary for me. Like, very, very scary for me. So I did have to go back to the States for some stuff. But when I came back to Madrid last February, I'm all over the place, if you can't tell. I came back in Madrid. I already knew I was going to be doing this 3-month trip a few months ahead. And let me tell you, I came back to Madrid mourning the city because all I could think about was, how am I going to leave for like 6 months? Now 3 months. I mean, It was ridiculous. For 3 weeks, every single day, I went out into the city and I think I teared up just a little bit. It just felt like everything was slipping away. I wasn't sleeping good. I felt like I had brain fog. I genuinely felt I was losing Madrid. But it makes sense because I think I created a bad attachment. And I know that sounds super dramatic, but when you think about it, this is very normal. It just manifests for different people in different ways, right? Like maybe you're feeling this way because you know you have to quit your job. Maybe you're feeling this way because you're so wrapped up in your relationship and you think you're gonna lose your boyfriend if you're honest with him. Like again, maybe it sounds weird in my example, but this happens to everybody. It just manifests in different ways and with different things. So here I am, going out in Madrid every day, tearing up, thinking I'm gonna lose it. Because again, I have so many emotional ties to the city. But I realized, Maria, if you have to pack up and leave tomorrow, Madrid isn't going away. Like, I remember I kind of split my brain into the logical and emotional. And sometimes I can tell I need to lean more into one. And in these moments, I was super emotional. And my logical brain, instead of getting frustrated with me, it kept saying, but Maria, Madrid won't go away. It's always here. Because truly, my emotional brain was feeling like it was going to be bombed and I was never going to see it again. Truly, like, Madrid will always be here. It's always going to be a place that I love. I'm going to own a home here one day. I know it. Like, I can always visit, whatever. Like, this is what I was just trying to tell myself in this moment. And again, I really think we should always have what I call a heart posture that's willing to let anything go at any time if it aligns with the truth. I'm super big on truth. And again, I just knew in that moment being attached to Madrid the way I was wasn't good. And you don't do this because you don't care about something or someone or a job, whatever, but because I think we care enough about what's best, even if what's best might be difficult for us and not what we initially planned. But the really beautiful thing about this, which is healthy detachment, is that it gives you the ability to look at things objectively in your life and remove your emotions from the equation. You know, a part of why my logical brain was doing that is because my logical brain knew, okay, she has such an emotional tie to this city. But if we take out this emotional tie, it's really not that big of a deal. And when I was able to remove all of my feelings towards what I felt about Madrid, I really was able to understand, okay, I know why I like this city. It made sense. I mean, it made so much sense because of what it meant to me. But again, the logical side of me also knew, okay, it makes sense why you're attached, but this is unhealthy. You need to be open to other things in your life and know that there's other cities, other opportunities, more people to meet, more things. You know, again, back to the chocolate example of when I was a child. Maria, there's other chocolates other than Twix. You know, there's Snickers. Let's be open, right? And I just knew, intuitively, I knew I needed a separation. I didn't feel like I needed to move away, but I knew I needed a separation. So I wanted to be open to this truth because when I looked at it objectively, I needed separation. And I needed to pull away. So I think in our lives, this is so important to do and examine because holding on to anything too tightly and this thing having control over our mood is never good. If something controls your mood, that means it controls you and you don't control it. And I would really advise you to think about that. Whether that's a person, a job, whatever it may be. If something can ruin your day, that's a problem. Now, okay, of course, like there's things like learning your dad is in the hospital. You know what I mean? If you're obsessing about you being super fat and that ruins your day, that's a problem. If you're obsessing that you never want to make your boss upset in your corporate job making all this money, that's a problem. And something that I really came to realize on this 3 month trip, being in these absolutely stunning cities, so stunning, is that life is just an experience. People are experiences. Having a job is an experience. In fact, all we do is only an experience. And these experiences are gifts because actually, in reality, we possess nothing. We possess nothing. Think about it. The people we love the most, they can choose to not want to have a relationship with us. The home we buy, our identities, all the experiences we get to have, these aren't possessions. We don't get to keep them forever. We just get to experience them. I think the best example is maybe a romantic relationship. Hopefully you're with this person out of choice. And this person and you have the choice any day to walk away. You don't possess this person. You get to experience life with them because hopefully you're both choosing each other every day. And when you look at life that way, I was really looking at it from an angle of cities, right? When you look at life that way, you realize that everything is a gift and you appreciate it all the more because you realize, oh, it can all be taken away because it can be. And again, when you see life as a series of experiences rather than things that you need to control, things that you have to possess, it helps you be so much more present in your life. This really helped me actually love Madrid more fully when I wasn't worried about losing it because I realized, Madrid is an experience. It's a gift that I'm having. It made me appreciate it all the more. And it made me appreciate so many things all the more deeply and realize that I don't need to cling on to anything because of fear. Like, I just need to realize that I'm so lucky to be able to be having all these experiences because, again, we possess nothing. I think the paradox here is that when you hold on to things too tightly, or sorry, when you hold on to things lightly and you realize they're just experiences, I think you get to enjoy them more because you savor the moment more. And again, it's a gift. When I stopped clinging to Madrid, and I'm just using Madrid as one example. I have other things, but I feel like this was the most concrete one. And I started appreciating it as a gift that I got to have, an experience I was blessed to have. I really could just see it more clearly, and I think I could love it more purely. And again, this applies to everything: relationships, career paths, identity. The moment you say, this is who I am and it can never change, or this is what I need and I can't be happy without it, I think you're putting yourself in a prison. And I want to end this section and this lesson with asking you, what is something that perhaps you're holding on too tightly that's actually limiting your growth? And what person, place, idea, or dream have you become so attached to that you're afraid to let life maybe surprise you with something even better? Something that I really learned was letting go doesn't mean you don't care. Of course, you care. I think it means you care enough to trust that if something is meant for you, if it's aligned with the truth, it'll work out for you at the right time. And if it doesn't, something better is coming along the way. I kept telling myself, Maria, you need to be open because you might think this Madrid is the best city for you to live in, but what if it's not? What if there's something better, right? But again, that makes us go into the unknown. So the goal isn't to become indifferent towards things you love. It's just to love them fully and freely, that you're not afraid of if maybe you have to let them go one day, and being open to other possibilities and opportunities. I think that's what healthy attachment really is. And that's how you stay open to beautiful surprises that I think life very often wants to give us. So, yeah, this idea of detachment, I really built upon it. I wrote a lot about it and I learned a lot. And I think moving forward with anything that I do, I'm really going to start looking at things objectively and remembering that maybe I don't know what's best for myself and I need to allow life to be able to surprise me. All right, amigos, we have one more section and then the conclusion section lesson. And this is about uncertainty and the art of not having answers. So here I am. 3 months have gone by. I was gone May, June, and all of July. I'm back in Madrid. And of course, everybody asked me when I came back, so what's next? Do you know where you want to live? Because everybody kind of knew that I was up in the air with a lot of things. What's your plan? And let me tell you something about this trip. I learned a lot of great lessons. I had so much fun, but I kind of came back with no concrete answers. Dun, 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 dun. No new boyfriend from these places. Everybody was convinced I'd come back with a boyfriend. Sorry, no boyfriend. Dates, but no boyfriend. Uh, no clear direction about where to live next. I'm still sorting that out right now. No major life revelation that suddenly made everything just so crystal clear. And honestly, I think the trip was just about being, because I have no idea what comes next. And you know what? I really like this. This is something that I have actually been growing to like in the last couple years, especially since moving to Europe. I actually am starting to like more and more the idea of just not knowing, because I used to think that not having answers meant I was failing or I wasn't planning enough. But you can't have it all figured out. I mean, life can change overnight. We all know this, but I think that when we're in such a routine with our life, we're like, what do you mean it can change? But then it changes and we're like, oh, remember when I was complaining that it wasn't changing? But uncertainty is so uncomfortable, right? But I think it's so good to sit in uncertainty, because how boring if we always knew what was going to happen. And, something that I've realized is that I can't rush myself to have an answer on this. I have to trust the process. And I also have to trust, which is kind of what I'm realizing right now, that I'm going to have to put some action into what I want. But what I realize is that we're very addicted to answers. We think we need to know where we're going, who we're becoming, what we're doing. We think uncertainty is, so scary. It's the enemy of progress. But again, I think uncertainty is maybe the actual freedom in disguise. I mean, think about it. When you don't know exactly what's coming next, you're open to possibilities you never could have even planned for. And when you're not locked into specific outcomes, life just can surprise you. And I think we need to admit more. I don't know. I just don't know. And doing this and being in this mental space, again, I really think can prepare you for very cool things. And I kept thinking about this actually, that maybe the most honest thing I can say right now is that I just don't know what I want. I don't know what I want, and I don't know what I'm going to want next year. I have a little bit of a vision for my life, and definitely like some goals that I think I'm going to work towards too. No, that I know I'm going to go towards too. But I don't know. Like, maybe it's not always a problem to solve, but it's just a place to be, because life is always changing. You're constantly growing. The person you are today might be somebody completely different than the person you were 6 months ago. I mean, that's kind of how I feel. So, again, why are we so obsessed with having permanent answers to temporary questions? I know I'm in the season of transition, and instead of fighting it for what felt like most of the year and trying to force clarity and harassing myself for answers and being productive, I just need to trust the process. And I know, oh, yes, I've heard this before. Yeah, well, I'm here to tell you again. And I'm learning that sometimes, again, the most courageous thing you can do is to not have a plan and just to admit that you don't know where you're going, but you're figuring it out along the way, because so much of life is just step by step. We can only see one step ahead of us. And if you are like me, I get it. It's a struggle. I like plans. I like clarity. I like knowing where I'm going. I like having a dinner reservation reserved. But I just keep on learning, and life keeps on teaching me. If you always are in this mindset, you're not allowing yourself to be pleasantly surprised to things that are maybe better than what you think you want. So, what if the reason that maybe I can't see the next step clearly is because I'm supposed to just take one little step first? Like, what if uncertainty isn't a sign that I'm lost, but maybe it's a sign that you are where you need to be? I keep coming back to the idea a lot about the timing of our lives. And I do think there are timing for certain things, but that's uncomfortable because while it sounds lovely, it doesn't feel lovely, right? But we want to know the whole plan up front. But again, I think most of the time we can only know the next step, because if we probably knew the whole plan, it would overwhelm us, or maybe we would get cocky and stop working and think, oh, well, it happens. Good. I'll be lazy now. Like, again, uncertainty really is an invitation to trust something bigger than our own understanding. So, something that I'm practicing is, instead of asking, what should I always be doing with my life? I'm asking, what's the next right step for right now that aligns with the truth? And instead of trying to, again, figure out a destination, I'm focusing on staying present, thinking about who I am now, and waiting for answers and just clarity to emerge in clarity's own time. And again, I'm discovering there's a lot of freedom in just saying, I don't know, because it takes the pressure off. It opens up possibilities. It reminds you that you don't have to have it all figured out because you won't. So, this is my lesson here. I want to ask you, what would you change in your life if you gave yourself permission to not have all the answers? What if uncertainty isn't something to solve, but something to dance with? And what if the reason you can't see the whole staircase is because you're only supposed to take the next step? What I'm learning is what I like to share in this podcast is that you can be the driver's seat of your life and also not know exactly where you're going, but you're still driving, if that makes sense. So sometimes being the driver means just, again, having the courage to keep moving forward and go ahead even when the road is foggy. I mean, think about it. When you're driving, you can only see right in front of you. You can't see 100 feet in front of you. You just pass the road. How would you say? You're on the road and you can only see right in front of you with what your lights have on in front of you. I was trying to say like brick by brick, but then I was like, no, that doesn't make no sense. I'm getting tired. Again, one step at a time, one road at a time. And maybe if you don't know exactly where you're going, it doesn't mean you're lost. It just means things are changing, you're in transition, and you need to trust the process. So here we are at the end of the podcast, the story. I hope these lessons were helpful. And I want to be really honest. Again, this trip didn't leave me with this super miraculous discovery about myself. I think a lot of times when people talk about these solo trips, they talk about how much they changed, blah, 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 they found themselves. That's wonderful. I think that happens more with people that have never spent any time alone. I've spent a lot of time alone before, so I just don't think it was that kind of trip for me. I actually think the trip was just to be. It was just to be still. Because really no dramatic transformation happened. I just sat with my thoughts. I reflected. Again, I proved to myself that I was still the very same person. But I think that that's what made this so powerful, that the trip was about something much simpler, but also maybe more profound, which was, again, I do not regret it. And it was about following what felt truthful for me at that time in my life. And even now, it really felt like the genuinely right thing to do. And I'm so lucky that I'm in a position that I can do that. And again, core pillar of this podcast is truth. I have always directed my life using truth. And I'm getting a lot better about figuring out my intuition and like aligning the two. So my whole life has always been about destination. And I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to make it less about where am I going, what am I achieving, what's the end goal. And again, I've always driven towards something specific and I've always kind of known where my road would lead. But this trip taught me that sometimes life is just about having no destination at all. And it's about being still, trusting, waiting, and again, going on journeys that don't have exact endpoints, because following your intuition means accepting that you don't know where it's leading you, but you trust it. And what I discovered is that when you stop being so focused on destination, you can actually start paying attention to the journey. We have such a bad habit of not enjoying the season that we're currently in because we want to be in the next season. And it's so sad because the season that you're in right now, you're never going to get it back. So don't miss those opportunities. Whenever I am like, something that I've also been taking a lot of advantage of right now too is when I get the opportunity to spend time with people, I full force spend time with them and I make myself so extremely present when I'm with people, because I don't know if I'm going to live in Madrid a lot longer. Maybe I'll be here 10 years. Maybe I'll only be here another 10 months. So again, you're not coming back to where you are right now, eh? So enjoy it. And I think a lot of times, again, we get wrapped up in where we're going, but think about it this way. And what I think is actually so important, but who are you becoming along the way? Because, okay, let's say you do get to where you're going. Amazing. Did it make you a better person along the way? Did you grow? Because honestly, if you didn't, and maybe you just got what you wanted so badly, but now you're so unhappy because you're at the peak, but you've had this like now dopamine like down. Again, who are you becoming along the way? Like, what's in your heart? What is your character looking like? Like, this is what's worth thinking about. Because again, I have so many goals and ambitions. Like, I really do. And I know they're going to happen for me. But this trip really was like, Maria, that's amazing. That's amazing that you have that. But who are you? Who are you? Who are you becoming along the way? Because what if you don't get there? Like, I think I will, but what if I don't? Like, nothing should be the end of the world. Again, maybe if I got everything I wanted right now, if I had all the answers, if everything I had, like, wanted falls exactly into place how I planned, I thought about this so much on the trip. Well, then maybe I wouldn't have much of a character. I wouldn't be an interesting person. Like, I really thought about that a lot. If I got everything I wanted today, would I would that be good for me? No. Honestly, if I'm answering truthfully, no. I need to hustle. I need to think. I need the uncertainty. I need to trust and wait and think about who I'm becoming along the way. I've talked about this before, but we live in a world right now that emphasizes doing, and they don't emphasize who are you on the inside. We're so wrapped up in external factors and identity and job and status and money. And then how many times do we complain about nobody's interesting these days? Nobody has emotional availability. Oh, he's a jerk. Oh, he's an asshole. The CEO. I mean, think about that CEO thing, the cheating scandal at Coldplay. They make so much money. They work at this big company. What about their character? Like, this is something that I was kind of like being like, stop getting so wrapped up in more money, this type of career or whatever. Who are you? Like, who are you? What would people say about you if you asked them? So, in the end, I learned to follow truth, intuition, this inexplicable pull. And that was really the courageous step for me. And it was really honoring a very deep part of me. And what I want you to take away from this is you don't need a dramatic, life changing 3-month solo trip to transform your life. I think you just need the courage to do what feels truthful for you, especially when it doesn't make sense to other people, and to be able to listen to that inner voice, because sometimes it whispers, right? Like, this inner voice isn't going to yell, it's going to whisper. So my challenge for you is, what is your intuition trying to tell you right now? Maybe what's a truth you've been avoiding, and what would you do if you trusted your inner voice? Because again, what I will say, and I will die on this hill, you are the driver's seat. You are the driver in your life. But I do think being the driver doesn't always mean we know exactly what our destination is. It's just the courage to get in day after day and allow life to reveal itself as we go. And as I always say, life is tough, but you are tougher. And part of being tougher is learning when to push forward and when to also be still, and when to have answers, but then also when to sit with questions, and when to grip the wheel tightly, but maybe when to let your intuition and put it in on cruise or whatever. Your truth is waiting for you, and it might not look exactly how you expected. I think life is full of not looking like we expected, but I know I've been very pleasantly surprised by this. So please get in your car, start your engine, trust your journey, even when you can't see the destination. Actually, especially when you can't see the destination, because sometimes the most beautiful discoveries happens when you're brave enough to drive without a GPS and with nothing but your intuition. Guys, if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. I hope you really took something away from these 3 really cool months for me, and I will catch you in a couple of weeks.